Thank you, Chairman Doyle. Before I ask a question, I just wanted to express agreement with Ranking Member Walden. I too have serious concerns about the FCC providing little notice to the committee before taking significant actions like the $9 billion 5G fund that was announced yesterday. And that proposal raises many questions that need to be answered, including how the money will be spent without good maps of mobile deployment. In addition, it's troubling that our members only seem to get answers to our letters to you hours before an oversight hearing. And so there is bipartisan agreement that you need to do better, and I expect so as we go forward. But I wanted to ask some questions about resiliency, which is so important in my district because we're probably most impacted by Superstorm Sandy, and we worry about all these hurricanes and storms that hit us repeatedly now with climate change getting worse. I have repeatedly urged the FCC to meaningfully improve the resiliency of communications and networks in the wake of disasters, but I fear my concerns, which are shared by millions of Americans, are falling on deaf ears. And because of that, I think it's time for Congress to step in to address this issue. Since 2018, the FCC has issued 2 reports with recommendations on how to improve our network resiliency. And as part of an investigation I requested, the Comptroller General issued a report in 2018 on network resiliency with recommendations with which the FCC agreed. So we're talking about 2 FCC reports, 1 Comptroller General report, 3 total. And I just wanted to, I'm kind of assuming that all of you had an opportunity to review these reports, but just to be sure, if anyone hasn't reviewed these reports, all 3, would you just raise your hand? I assume you have, so I don't expect anybody to raise their hand, but that means you all have, okay. Do any of you disagree with the recommendations in the reports, if implemented, that the recommendations that they have, if implemented, could meaningfully improve our nation's communications network? And you can just raise your hand if you disagree with the report's recommendations, essentially. I don't expect anybody to raise their hand. All right. So I think that's good, and I appreciate that we're generally in an agreement when it comes to using those reports as a baseline. But let me ask Commissioner Rosenworcel. I know you've all focused on this issue. So beyond the recommendations in these reports, what more do you think we should be considering?
Thank you. We need to update the wireless resiliency framework. 2 years ago, the GAO told us that they don't know how to measure it, they don't know how to enforce it. We've got work to do. Since that time, we've issued 4 public notices asking for comment about it. I think we should stop asking for comment and we should start fixing it.
Well, I certainly agree. As you know, the Trump administration is well known for undermining civil servants and ignoring experts if it benefits big corporate interests. And in October, the FCC approved the merger of T-Mobile and Sprint. However, serious questions have been raised about the transparency of the review process and whether expert analysis was ignored. And I've publicly said that I'm quite concerned about these allegations. So again, Commissioner, you voted against this merger and raised concerns about the process. Would you want to explain your process concerns a little bit?
Sure. This is the largest merger of wireless companies in our nation's history. We're all going to pay more for our wireless bills going forward as a result. And here's the problem. Before we even had any engineering, legal, or economic analysis before us, a majority of our commission announced that they were going to support it. And then after the Department of Justice reorganized the entire transaction, they took a lot of meetings on it, but they denied the public an ability to actually come in and comment about it. And then rewrote the original draft from our expert staff from front to back on major competition issues. On this committee, I think you should ask for a copy of that original draft because there are such glaring differences between it and what we issued publicly. And I think that sunlight's the best disinfectant. Congress, the courts, and the public should know what was changed and why.
Well, we'll certainly follow up on that. But let me ask Commissioner Stark, because I only have 30 seconds. I know you have some process concerns related to this merger. Can you elaborate as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In particular, with when the chairman announced that there was going to be the largest investigation of lifeline violations ever, I said that we should pause our review of the transaction, actually study what happened, let the investigation run its course, and in particular, as a former enforcement official, I wanted to know more before we allowed the transaction to go forward. As it turns out, there was a Wall Street Journal article just yesterday that was published that there are, in fact, potentially now more Lifeline investigations that are redound to Sprint. And so it certainly confirms that there needed to be more time and more investigation of what went forward. One other thing that I would highlight for you is when you're talking about an enforcement action like that, there are really two phases of it. The first is going to be a clawback because the U.S. government must be made whole. And so for whatever improper, ineligible Lifeline recipients Sprint received money for, all that money should come back. The second phase is going to be a penalty phase. Previously, we have issued penalties where there are improprieties with the Lifeline fund. I'll expect significant action on both fronts.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman's
Chairman.
time is expired.